Welcome or welcome back. My name is Michaela, and today we are going to be doing a 2025 book wrap up. I've been watching a few 2025 yearly reading wrap ups, and I really liked this one video I saw where the creator ranked all of her books from worst to best books of 2025. So that's how I'm going to be doing it today, too. And also, just a general note, if I read a series, I'm going to rate the series as a whole instead of each individual book in the series. And also, most of the books that I read this year are either fiction, contemporary romance, or Greek retellings. I did read a few nonfiction books this year as well because I was doing 75 hard earlier this year, and it requires that you read 10 pages of a nonfiction book every day. So I do have some nonfiction sprinkled in there as well. So if you're into those genres as well, then just keep watching. I'm going to try to go through these books pretty quickly. Otherwise, we will be here all day long and this video will be over an hour. But I'll try to tell you at least a little bit about what the book is about and if I liked it or not. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and get into my least favorite book of the year. So my least favorite book of the year is called I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki, and that is by Baek Si-hee. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. This book is sort of nonfiction slash memoir, and it is basically a script version sort of the author's therapy sessions. And while I did really appreciate the author's honesty in this book, I feel like you're only going to enjoy this book if you really like books with zero plot, zero direction, zero resolution of any kind. It's basically just stream of consciousness, but even the stream of consciousness thoughts don't relate back to one another, in my opinion. I would definitely not recommend this book if you are looking for a self-help therapy book that you think is going to act as de facto therapy for you. Do not under any circumstances read this book if that is the goal you have in mind. Next is The Autobiography of My Mother by Jamaica Kincaid. This book is historical fiction slash literary fiction. I really wanted to love this book because I've heard amazing things about Jamaica Kincaid, the author, and I do think the prose and the writing are really beautiful, really artistically done. So the writing is phenomenal. What I didn't like is, I guess, the content of the book. So our main character is very cold and closed off, and rightfully so because of lots of events that have happened in her life. But throughout the book, she basically experiences zero joy. And so it didn't really bring me joy to read the book, if that makes sense. It was a very, very bleak book. So if you're into that, if you like things like that, then I do think you will like this book. However, I don't think this book was right for me at the time that I read it. Next up on the list is Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. This book is a Greek retelling, and I read a lot of Greek retellings this year. This one was my least favorite of all the Greek retellings I read this year because maybe I incorrectly assumed, but I thought this book was going to be all about Medusa and Medusa's story. I mean, the title is called Stone Blind, so that's a reference to Medusa. And there's a picture of Medusa on the cover of the book. So I thought this was going to be all about Medusa, but it was really only 1/3 about Medusa, 1/3 about the goddess Athena, and then 1/3 about Perseus. I thought Perseus and all of the gods represented in this book were really, really annoying and unlovable characters. I really just wanted more and more of Medusa because she's a very interesting character to me, and that's not what I received in this book. Next on the list, I actually have this book in real life. It is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. You've probably seen this book around. It's really, really famous right now. It's a contemporary romance, and this is basically the embodiment of a book where you don't have to think at all. It's the kind of book where you can zone out for 10 pages and not have to go back and reread them. You can just keep going. So if you're into books like that, then I would definitely recommend this book, and it is a part of a series. You do not have to read the series in order. It's kind of like each book can stand alone if you want it to, but if you are into that type of book, then I would recommend this and all the other books in the series, even though I haven't read those books yet, and I probably won't. But yeah, basically it's a city girl who inherits a cafe in a small town. She meets a farmer. The tropes are like grumpy sunshine, found family, forced proximity, that kind of book. Next up is An Appeal to the World by the Dalai Lama and Franz Alt. This was an extremely short nonfiction slash philosophy type book, but very accessible. And it was kind of about how to affect peace and change in the world. It was a very average book. I really only picked it up because I needed nonfiction to read during 75 Hard, and the book itself is really short and has small pages, so I thought that it would kind of be an easy read. And it was. And in that same vein, for the same reasoning, I also read The Little Book of Hygge. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The subtitle is The Danish Way to Live Well, and this book is by Mike Viking. This book is nonfiction / self-help that tells you how to live a really cozy life the way that the Danes do it. Next up is Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown. This is also nonfiction / self-help that I read during 75 Hard. This book is about having the courage to stand alone and to stand your ground and stand up for what you believe in, even in the face of judgment and pushback. So kind of like how to not be a people pleaser. Next is The Paris Novel by Ruth Reichl. Again, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize if not. This book is fiction, and it's basically your classic, like, a girl goes to Paris, that kind of book. I definitely think there should have been a trigger warning for child sexual assault in this book, like right at the very beginning, and there was no trigger warning, so I was pretty surprised to see that in the book. I also think that was sort of unnecessary to put in the book, like it didn't really drive the book, and to me it didn't seem like an important theme to have in the book. So I really think that could have just not be put in the book or even replaced with something else. But aside from that, like I said, it's basically just your average book about a girl going to Paris. I loved the descriptions of Paris and food and art that were in this book, but I do think in general the book was sort of easy and just kind of predictable for me personally. Next is The Shadow of Perseus by Claire Haywood. This is another Greek retelling, and this book is sort of advertised as a feminist Greek retelling about Perseus. So it's the life of Perseus, but told from the perspective of the 3 women that were really close in his life. One woman is Danae, that's his mother. One woman is Medusa, and one woman is Andromeda, which is his wife. Next up is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard, and like I said earlier, I think it'll just be easier if I rate each series as a whole instead of each individual book in the series. This series does have 4 books. It's young adult, it's fantasy, romance, that kind of book. Typically, I would not read young adult fiction, but at the time, I followed Victoria Aveyard on Instagram, and I just really loved her presence, and so I wanted to read one of her books, and this just so happened to be the one that I picked up. This book did feel very young adult fiction to me. I loved the story itself, which is the only reason why I kept going in the series, because to be honest, like every book in the series was a solid 3-star for me. Like it wasn't great. It was very just average, but I really liked the story and wanted to know how it would end. So I overlooked things that I didn't like about the writing, the pacing, the character development, things like that, just because I really wanted to know how the story would end. Next up is Happenstance by Tessa Bailey. This book is a contemporary romance. This is probably the most absurdly ridiculous book that I read this year, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Like if you enjoy reading books where you have to suspend belief, like you know this would probably never happen in real life, but you're just like ignoring that. If you like books like that, I think you will like this one. The female main character is Elise Brandeis, and she's sort of a commitment phobic person, and she finds herself in a relationship with 3 different men at the same time, and she's not hiding it from any of them. Like this is all an agreement that they're all okay with. This book, again, was like silly and ridiculous, but I did mostly enjoy reading it. So yeah, that's Happenstance by Tessa Bailey. Next up is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is fiction about the rise and fall of a really popular band from the 70s. The band is fictional, but I do believe the book is largely inspired by the band Fleetwood Mac, like the real life band Fleetwood Mac. And it's told through interviews, so not like your typical paragraph prose style book. And it mostly follows Daisy and Billy, who, again, I think are loosely inspired by Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac. It explores themes of like all different kinds of love, as well as fame, addiction, and drugs as well. Next up is Dream Girl Drama by Tessa Bailey. And earlier I did say that I was going to rank each series as a whole. The Big Shot series by Tessa Bailey is the only exception to this rule, and that's because each book, even though they're technically a part of a series, each book can stand alone, and you could read them out of order if you wanted to. There are recurring characters in this book, but the female main character and the male main character are different in each 3 books, so I am going to rate those separately. So Dream Girl Drama is a part of the Big Shot series, and I think this is the 3rd book in the series. I could be wrong, but it is about a hockey player named Sig, S-I-G, Sig, and a rich but sheltered harp player, a harpist named Chloe. So they meet each other and have immediate chemistry, and then they later learn that their adult parents are engaged to be married, which would make them future step siblings. So, yeah, that's a problem. And then they have to sort of navigate their attraction to each other while really trying to be platonic because obviously they don't want a whole situation. Next is Atalanta by Jennifer Saint. This is a Greek retelling about a mortal girl named Atalanta who is abandoned by her parents basically and then raised by bears. But the goddess Artemis sort of watches over her, and Artemis warns her to never ever get married. So we sort of see how that unfolds. And then also Atalanta is the only female present in the group known as the Argonauts, who are very famous in Greek mythology. Next is The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss. This book is nonfiction and self-help. I did like the main premise of the book and the book overall, like the message it was trying to send. And the message is about achieving financial freedom so that you can work as much or as little as you like, as well as taking mini retirements instead of working for your entire life and then taking one big retirement at the end. You sort of work for maybe 2, 3, or 4 years at a time and then take a mini retirement of a few months or maybe 1 year. And also it's about delegating unnecessary tasks to other people or to just fully remove unnecessary tasks from your to-do list entirely. What I did not like about the book is sometimes his tone, the author's tone, is very harsh almost. I'm not sure that's the word I would use, but there were times where I did not like the tone he was using, especially at the very beginning of the book. And then one other really small criticism about this book is it is a little outdated at times because the book, I think, is from 2007, and the internet has changed a lot since then, and making money on the internet has changed a lot since then, obviously. And that is one of the main themes of the book. So yeah, overall, it was a good book, just with those two minor criticisms. Okay, so at this point, we've gone through the books that I didn't really like and then some of the books that were pretty okay. Now we're getting into books that I actually did like. The first on that list is called Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez. This is another nonfiction / self-help book about money, but I'd say the main premise or theme of the book is like the philosophy of money, or what is your mindset and your relationship to money? Especially, what do we actually need and what is splurging or sort of unnecessary, or even like posturing? Like, what are we buying just to keep up with the Joneses, basically? And it sort of encourages us to put our ego aside and realize that we don't actually need to be purchasing a lot of the things that we purchase. We just do it because everyone else is doing it. And if we find a way to stop spending money on those things, then we can actually retire earlier, which is kind of everyone's goal for the most part, I think. Similar to the 4-Hour Workweek, though, a little bit of the information was outdated, but other than that, I really liked the book and I really liked the theme of this book. Next is another nonfiction self-help book called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. This book helps you decide what technology, apps, programs, things like that actually bring joy and positivity in your life. So like how to recognize which ones are actually good for you and helping you and which ones you're just using out of habit and the ones that suck you in, you know? I did like this book because I was super interested in reducing my screen time this year or last year in 2025. So I think I like this book so much because I was heavily interested in the topic at the time. And I have filmed a couple videos related to that as well, so I'll link those in the description box if you're interested in that sort of topic as well. Next is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I think a lot of people were anxiously awaiting this book in 2025. I also feel like a lot of the discourse I saw around this book online were people not liking the book. I did really like the book. I will say it does share a lot of themes and similarities with The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. So this is sort of like the Emily Henry version of The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This one does have more intentional romance in it, again, because it's an Emily Henry book and she is a contemporary romance author. While I do think that The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was much better, I still really did like this book and I would recommend it, especially if you did like The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Next up is Clytemnestra by Costanza Melissa Casati. This is another Greek retelling, and this one is about Clytemnestra, obviously. But Clytemnestra is known as like a really vengeful villain in Greek mythology. But in this book, she's sort of reimagined to show the complexity of her actions and the trauma that sort of informed her choices. So it doesn't necessarily try to redeem her for the things that she did. I think it just wants to show us why she did what she did. And I really liked this one because, what is that saying? I support women's rights and women's wrongs. That is basically the theme of this book, Clytemnestra. Next is All Adults Here by Emma Straub. This book is fiction about the Strick family, who are very imperfect, but they're also very dynamic and realistic characters. Yeah, they make questionable choices at times, but the book is really just about family dynamics, the different types of love, and even acceptance, I would say. I really liked this one. I also bought this book at Emma Straub's bookstore. She lives in New York City and has her own bookstore in New York City. And I visited it this summer and bought that book. So I think the positive experience with the book purchasing sort of influenced me to like the book a lot too. Next is Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. This book is also a part of the Big Shot series. So in this book, the two main characters, the male main character is a professional golfer who's basically the best ever, but he's sort of on a downslide, like he's not performing as well as he used to. And the female main character is his biggest fan. This one has dual point of view, so his point of view and her point of view. This one's also sort of grumpy sunshine and like protective, possessive male main character, if you're into that. Next up is Dream Count by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This book is fiction. This book has 4 points of view, all from 4 different women. 3 of them are Nigerian women who are, I think, mostly upper class. And then there's one woman from Guinea as well who is lower class. And it talks a lot about just their lives, but especially their romantic relationships and how they interweave into each character's life. I think this author's books are sort of an acquired taste. Like, you really only like them if you like this type of book. It's very reminiscent, it's very long, and it's very like all-encompassing, like lots of details. She goes really deep into explaining what happens in the book and how the characters feel about things. I personally really like that writing style. A lot of people don't, and a lot of people always say that her books are way too long, but I have always really liked her fiction books, and I did like this one as well. This one was no exception. Next up is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This book is contemporary romance. I've read and loved all of her books. This one was no exception. So the female main character is Nora, and she's a very like cutthroat, career-oriented type person, and she takes a trip to a small town with her sister because she feels like they've fallen out of rhythm and she wants to get their closeness back. And while she's there, she keeps running into her like career nemesis or rival, so it is sort of like enemies to lovers. His name is Charlie, by the way, and then it just shows what unfolds, basically. Next is another Greek retelling. This one is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. And in Greek mythology, I think Ariadne is mostly known for being the sister of the Minotaur. And she ends up putting her brother, the Minotaur, in danger for the sake of love and the potential at love. And then we sort of see how that unfolds for her throughout the book. I really liked this one a lot, especially while I was reading it. I thought it was very engrossing during the actual reading process. Next on the list is Psyche and Eros. This is another Greek retelling, and this was my favorite Greek retelling that I read this year. This one's by Luna McNamara, and basically in the book there's a mortal girl named Psyche, and she offends the goddess Aphrodite on accident because people think Psyche is so beautiful, and Aphrodite is like the queen of beauty, so she takes offense that people are finding this mortal girl so beautiful, and so she tells Eros, who is the god of desire, to basically curse Psyche. The curse is set, but not really in the way that it was intended to, and then we see sort of what unfolds after the curse has taken effect. I think the reason I really liked this one is because a lot of Greek retellings span over many years, and they're sort of telling about the whole life of a character. And so it's kind of Greek retelling with a subgenre of being just general fiction, whereas this one, it was a Greek retelling with the subgenre, in my opinion, being romance. And so I really liked that take on a Greek retelling, that it was very just like a romance book. So yeah, that was my favorite Greek retelling of the year. Next is The Au Pair Affair by Tessa Bailey. This is the first book in the Big Shot series, so her sports romance series. The male main character is Burgess. He's a really big and buff hockey player, and he's like captain of his hockey team. And he hires Tallulah to be his live-in nanny for his preteen daughter named Lissa. There is an age gap in this book. He is 37 and she is 26. And the tropes of this one are obviously forced proximity because she's a live-in nanny, like she literally lives with him in a separate room. And it's sort of also workplace romance because she is there to work. And with all of Tessa Bailey's books in this Big Shot series, I think it's just like overprotective hero type male main character. But this book, The Au Pair Affair, was my favorite in the Big Shot series. Okay, so at this point, we've gone through the books that I didn't really like, the books that I thought were okay, the books that I did like, and now these are the books that I loved in 2025. First on the list is actually young adult fiction, which you heard me say earlier. I don't typically ever read young adult fiction, but this book is called Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. And when I was in high school, I really loved John Green books, and I hadn't read any of them since high school. And Turtles All the Way Down was published after I had left high school, so basically after the time where I would have been reading young adult fiction. The main character is Asa Holmes. She grapples with OCD throughout the book. And in the book, she is encouraged by her best friend, who's very like outgoing and free-flowing and in some ways very opposite to Asa, but she's encouraged by her best friend to investigate the disappearance of her childhood friend's dad, who is very, very rich. And there's basically like a cash reward for anybody who can help the police find the whereabouts of this man. And the best friend really wants this cash reward. So she sort of encourages Asa, who is the main character, to do some snooping with her childhood friend to see if she can figure out where his dad went. And yeah, it explores a lot of mental health problems and how they can present themselves and how they are perceived by other people in your life. It explores lots of themes of friendship and various types of love, like mother-daughter love, father-son love, young teenage romance, friendship love. There's themes of all kinds of love in this book. But I did really, really like this one. And with the Red Queen series, I said earlier, it just felt so young adult. But there are some young adult books, like Turtles All the Way Down, that sort of like rise above the young adult genre. Like, even though the characters are young adults, the book itself and the story is so well told that people of all ages can really enjoy it. So I really, really liked this one. Next is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This book is a contemporary romance. And truthfully, a book in this genre, contemporary romance, would not typically be in like my favorite books of the year. But I think I just really resonated with the female main character. And so I felt really seen and like represented, I guess, in this book by her. But in this book, the female main character is trying to break into the STEM world, like the academia world. But until she can land a good job, she has a fake dating side business, I guess, that she does for extra money. And one of her clients is named Greg. So she is the fake girlfriend of Greg. But Greg's brother is on the hiring committee for a job that the female main character is trying to get. So he is also in the academia world, and he is also in the STEM field, which is where she's trying to go. But they're also rivals in a way, so it's kind of enemies to lovers. It's definitely workplace romance. And there's a fake dating trope, but this one is different because usually it's the two people in the fake relationship that end up together. And it's not a spoiler to say that, but that's not where this one is headed. It's like the female main character is fake dating the male main character's brother. So that's sort of a different take on the fake dating trope. But yeah, it is very, very high praise for me to put a contemporary romance in this category of like my favorite books of a year. So I really liked this one. But again, I think it's just because I loved the female main character so much. I felt for her, and I also saw myself in her a lot. Next is a book we talked about a little bit earlier in the video, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I am very, very late to the game with this book because this book has been out for years now, and I just now read it for the first time in 2025. Everyone I've ever heard of has always loved this book, and I am no exception. It is an absolute page turner. It was so easy to read, but not in the way that it's an easy read, but in the way that like it just makes you want to keep reading the book. But this is fiction, and maybe even like a tiny bit historical fiction, but mostly fiction for sure. And it spans the life of Evelyn Hugo, who is a Hollywood star. And Evelyn Hugo is a fictional character, but she's loosely inspired by Marilyn Monroe. So we sort of see the span of her life from childhood all the way to like when she's elderly. And because she's a highly famous actress, she's in the news all the time. So the book sort of gives us her truth, like her side of the story, and interspersed between each chapter is a news article about her, which is basically how the media was portraying these things that happened to her and these things that she did. And I love books like that. I think that's why I love Greek retellings so much, because it's like the story that we hear, the story that's canon, and then there's also the truth, like what really happened. And I love books where it shows you both of those things. So with Greek retellings, it's kind of like there are Greek myths about these characters, the gods and the mortals and the heroes and everything that is well known and accepted. But there's a resurgence of authors who are like rewriting stories of these characters so that we can understand them better and in some ways really reimagine like the truth of what happened. And I think The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, even though obviously it's not a Greek retelling, I think it does that so well. And yeah, that's just something I really, really love about fiction. And that's probably one of the things I fell in love with about reading in the first place, like when I was a kid. Next is another book that I actually do have in person. By the way, the reason I don't have so many of these books in person is because I use my library for almost everything that I read. So this is just a casual reminder to use your local libraries. They are fantastic. They are a free resource that you can use. Reading does not have to be an expensive hobby for you. And if you're into audiobooks, libraries also have audiobooks as well with no ads. So support your local libraries, please. They will go away if we don't use them. But anyway, the next book is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, and this is sort of a prequel to the Hunger Games series, and it follows Haymitch Abernathy's Hunger Games, so he was in the 50th Hunger Games. And he is the mentor to Katniss Everdeen, who is the main character of the original Hunger Games trilogy. I think a lot of people also read this book this year. I am no exception, and I loved it so much. It was so good. I would definitely recommend it if you like the Hunger Games for sure. And speaking of the Hunger Games, next on the list is the entire Hunger Games series, and I'm talking about the original trilogy. So Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I was in middle school, high school, I think, when these books came out, and so I read them for the first time like as they were coming out, and I've never reread that series. But this year I decided to reread that series for the first time since high school. I think because Suzanne Collins is rewriting more books in that series and in that world. Like she wrote Sunrise on the Reaping, like we just talked about, and she wrote The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes as well. I think that came out this year or last year, probably last year. And I think just reading books in that world sort of inspired me to want to reread the original Hunger Games trilogy. And so I did reread that this year. I was curious to see if I would still like it as an adult because, like I said, I did read it in high school and it is young adult fiction. So it was very targeted for the age I was at the time. But this is one of those books, unlike for me, the Red Queen series, but more similar to Turtles All the Way Down, where yes, it's young adult fiction, but it sort of is beyond age group. Like even though the characters are teenagers, it can really be a deep and profound and easy to love book by people of all ages. So if by some chance you have not read the Hunger Games series by now, I would highly recommend it. Next on the list is another series. It is the Fourth Wing series by Rebecca Yarros. I think a vast majority of us have also read this series by now, but I think the third book in the series came out this year, and it had been a while since I read the first two books, so I reread book 1 and 2 before the third book came out, and then I read that third book as well. But this book is fantasy and romance. The main character is Violet Soaringale, and she attends a war college to become a dragon rider. A big theme in the whole series is that dragon riders are supposed to be really strong and tough people, and Violet is very small and short in stature, and her body and bones and muscles are weak a lot of the time. So her navigating that situation is a very prevalent theme of this series. In the book, they go through dangerous like training, challenges, rivalries, very similar to the Divergent series. So if you liked the Divergent series, it's kind of like that. And the male main character is Xaden Ryerson, who is the classic like dark, brooding, grumpy male main character. But yeah, me personally, I love the Fourth Wing series and I cannot wait for the next book. I forgot, I do have one book in this series. It's the third book, Onyx Storm. Somehow I don't own this entire series, but I do own the third book. I don't know why that is, but yes, here's the cover. It does have sprayed edges, which I know people like. Unpopular opinion, I don't like sprayed edges. I actually think this one is okay. This one is not bad, but in general, like with Pumpkin Spice Cafe, maybe it's me, I don't know. I just feel like they look so cheesy and like so gaudy. I really just prefer normal pages. Maybe, I think that's just me. I think a lot of people really like sprayed edges these days. I do not. Next on the list is another book that I have in real life, and this is a reread. I love this book so much, and I do reread this book every 2 or 3 years probably. I've probably read this book at least 6 times by now, and it is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I know I keep saying I don't typically read young adult fiction, and that's true. I usually don't, but I guess this year I did dabble in young adult fiction a little bit. I think technically this is young adult fiction, but it's more historical fiction than anything. So it's basically about this child in foster care. She's cared by 2 foster parents, and it is set during World War II, like during Nazi Germany times. And the book is narrated by Death. Like, Death is a character in this book, and he is the narrator. And the reason I love this book so much is just the writing. Like, the writing is so beautiful in this book, in my opinion. And I think part of why I love the beautiful writing style so much is because it's narrated by Death. Like, it's just so unique, and it lends itself to very new perspectives and descriptions of things. So yeah, if by now you have not read The Book Thief, I highly recommend it. This is one of my favorite books of all time, like probably in my top 5 books of all time. So maybe it's a little bit unfair to have a reread so high on my list, because obviously if I'm rereading something, it's probably one of my favorite books. But yeah, I do really love this book. And we have one more book to go. The last book and my favorite book of 2025 is Manacled by Senlin Yu. This book is fan fiction and it's dark romance. You have probably heard of this book by now if you are on Book Talk at all. I don't typically read dark romance. I have read a couple dark romance books in the past. Like, I've read Haunting Adeline, which I think is the poster child for dark romance. But I guess I was just seeing this book everywhere, and people always say that it's amazing, even though it's fan fiction. I think there is an assumption that fan fiction isn't going to be written well, but this one I thought was written very well. So it is Harry Potter fan fiction, and it's in an alternate reality where Harry Potter actually died. This is not a spoiler, but it's in an alternate reality where Harry Potter died and then Voldemort took over. The female main character is Hermione Granger and the male main character is Draco Malfoy. This is the only book I read this year that sort of put me in a, what is that called? A book slump. Like, usually when I finish a book, I can start a new one that same day and I don't need to like ruminate in a book or anything. I can just go ahead and start the next one. With this one, I think it took me a few days to be able to pick up another book. And while I was reading it too, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to read like a Tessa Bailey or an Emily Henry book after this. Like, I'm going to need to really carefully choose a book that I can read after this, because the book was just so all-encompassing and it really pulls you in. And if you've read the Harry Potter series, which I feel like at this point a lot of us have, then you already know the world that we're living in. You already know the characters that we're dealing with. So the groundwork is laid and you can just really immerse yourself in this new and alternate version of events. I'm literally getting chills like the longer I talk about it. I will say it's very important to note that there are so many triggers in this book. So if you are considering reading this book, please look up a list of trigger warnings because there are so many and they are very serious ones as well. So please make sure you're okay with reading about these topics before you actually pick up the book. The author of this book, Sin-Lin Yu, she obviously wrote this book as fan fiction, which means she can't technically profit or make money off of her story because the world and the characters are not hers, they are someone else's. But this year in 2025, she rewrote this story using her own original characters and her own original world. I have not read that book yet. I think I will at some point just because I loved this one so much and I know I'll probably want to reread it at some point. So I think whenever I get to the point where I feel like I want to reread Manacled, I'll probably just read her new book instead, and that one is called Alchemized, again by Sin-Lin Yu. And yeah, that was my favorite book of the year, and I really did not expect that going into it, but that's how it ended up. So yeah, that's all the books I read in 2025. I did read 41 books this year, which is way more than I usually read, actually. I think the only reason I was able to read more this year is because I really made it a point to stop doom scrolling on my phone, and I was like trying to reduce my screen time. And I feel like the first thing that happens whenever anyone tries to reduce their screen time is they end up reading a lot more, and I was no exception. So I usually read about 20 books a year, but this year I had 41. So that's really good for me. I will say next year, so in 2026, I'm setting a new goal for myself, not a number goal because I never set number goals when it comes to reading. But you might have noticed in all the books I've read in 2025, a great number of them are very like widely known, famous, even book talk-esque books. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with books like that. Like there's nothing wrong with getting your recommendations through Book Talk or through BookTube, but I want to challenge myself in 2026 to only read books that I find organically in real life. Like I want to go into a library or go into a bookstore, pull a book off the shelf, read the synopsis on the back or in the front flap or whatever it is, and just be called to the story. Like I don't want to read anything that I've heard of before. I only want to read books that I've never heard of before. I will say if by some chance like the next Fourth Wing book or the next ACOTAR book comes out, or if Tessa Bailey writes something new, I will probably read that. But in general, for the most part, I really want to challenge myself to read books that I'm finding myself, just because I think that's going to be a really fun and fulfilling thing for me to do. And I think it's going to enhance my reading process as well. So I'm really looking forward to that in 2026. And I would love to hear what your reading goals are for 2026 if you have any, or if you want to share your favorite books of 2025, I would love to hear those as well. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I wish you the very best of reading in 2026. Bye!